episode 374 of the Anik and Florian podcast. Look at Kenny Florian in all his glory, and I'm not even talking about the haircut. It's a brand new Macintosh computer, right? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, you better believe it.
Whole new man, whole new camera, whole new Kenny Florian headed into 2023. And if you wanted to see him last Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, had to plunk down your money and see Ken Flo on pay-per-view.
That's right, man. I missed Thanksgiving with the family, but it was cool, man. You know, it was our first pay-per-view for the PFL. It was a big night, and we had a great night of fights. So it was exciting, man. It was awesome.
So weigh-in day on Thanksgiving, that would seem to be pretty rare.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Is that Ray Seppo doing that to everybody? What a guy. No, it was a very special night and a special show. We will get into all of that. Time permitting, we'll also get into the UFC main event cancellation day of with Derek Lewis there. And the new fight night, Kennedy and Nzechukwu and Iwan Kutelaba. A lot to recap there. But of course, the lead, at least since we were last on the air, is that Yuri Prochazka has vacated the UFC light heavyweight championship. I guess most devastating shoulder injury in UFC history. So now Jan Błachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev will fight for the now vacant light heavyweight championship at UFC 282. Coming up not that long from now, less than 2 weeks away. Ken Flo, your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, that's right. You know, listen, this was terrible news, obviously, for Yuri Prochazka, who was a newly minted champion, who was seemingly on top of the world and, coming off his best performance of his career. And now it kind of takes down Glover Teixeira with him as well, which was unfortunate. Glover, I guess, didn't take the fight, or the timing didn't work out, or whatever it was. The circumstances around that kind of screwed everything up. So, yeah, I really feel for Yuri and Glover. Yuri in particular, I hope he's able to come back from this injury. It sounds like it was a nasty one, and shoulders can be really problematic, man. So that was horrible to hear. He's still young, though. I'm confident that he will be able to come back. I hope it's nothing that is going to take him out and kind of limit him permanently. Sometimes you see guys come back and they are never the same. I hope that's not the case. Yuri has been one of the most exciting fighters in the world for a long time now, and then being the champion of the UFC, being on top of the world, and not being able to compete and defend his belt for the first time, it was horrible news.
The way he handled it, though, has to be lauded, right? Immediately vacating the title, yep. And all indications are that he has guaranteed language that when he comes back, he will fight for the undisputed light heavyweight title, whenever that may be. But to just vacate and step aside and allow the division to continue without getting like secondary, I'm sure he got many opinions, right? But I don't know. It speaks to, the martial artist in him, that he wants the division to be a meritocracy, to continue. And to that end, we have Jan Błachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. Plenty more on that coming up over the next 2 weeks. But you mentioned Glover Teixeira, because that's a huge angle in all of this. And a lot of talking heads have spent a lot of time talking about this. In Glover wanting more time to prepare for Magomed Ankalaev. He would have fought Jan Błachowicz on December 10th, but wanted more time to fight Ankalaev, who seems to be being classified as the number one contender, Ken Flo, right? Like Magomed Ankalaev ain't going to have the red corner, right? Because he won't have the higher ranking. I have the fight card here somewhere. But it seemed to me that, lead horse in this, man around whom the fight card was built, was Magomed Ankalaev, and Teixeira wanted more time to prepare for that individual.
Yeah, I understand that, right? Because Ankalaev is a big-time problem, not an easy guy, not an easy problem to solve. And I think that, for Ankalaev, he's a guy that seemingly is always ready to go, always ready to rock. And, that's not an easy challenge, and a completely different challenge, in my opinion, than Yuri Prochazka.
So Glover Teixeira was going to be fighting in Las Vegas, not at Madison Square Garden, locally close to Danbury, Connecticut, which I think had been his hope. But obviously it was a pretty violent affair back in June in Singapore between Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka. But it does beg the question, Kenny, in MMA, you never know what's going to happen. You really don't know what's going to happen if you're Glover Teixeira. And he is leaving a championship opportunity on the table and speaking maybe in a way that we haven't heard Glover Teixeira speak necessarily before. I just think it's really interesting as far as he is concerned. And for yourself as a championship athlete, I know there's a southpaw angle to all of this. I don't know. I think part of Glover had to be pretty inclined to maybe take the fight because he has echoed to the masses that he's pretty close to the end, and you just never know, right? He was at the tail end of what he thought was going to be maybe his final training camp as a UFC fighter. Well,
you nailed it. That's what makes it so unfortunate and interesting on his decision, because he is older, right? And who knows? This fight could never happen. We know, as you mentioned, in mixed martial arts, anything can happen. And also, your opportunities could run out completely. This fight may never, ever happen again. Yuri should be back in a year and a half. We're not sure if that is going to be, it means he's ready to fight. Does that mean he's ready to get back into camp? Does that, so there's a lot of ifs there. And that just pushes things back. And, when you're talking about training camps and staying active, all those things, every month takes its toll on your body when you're that age.
Dude.
So again, maybe I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not speaking for Glover, but that stuff does take its toll. And for a guy who's getting up there in age a little bit, who's been around for a long time fighting, that can be tough.
He's not as old as you nor I, but he's pretty old, that Glover Teixeira. Yeah. By the way, your headroom is a little bit grander than mine. Your hair sort of covers it. I can scrouch down a little bit here. We'll try to even this out, make it. Longo's going to ruin the aesthetic here coming up in 10 minutes, but I guess that's neither here nor there. Real quick, how do you handicap Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Błachowicz? I'd imagine Ankalaev will be the betting favorite if it's not already out there. I'm sure Cody will chase it right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Ankalaev versus Jan Błachowicz. I know you're not prepared to give an in-depth handicap today, but any quick thoughts on that?
I'll do my best, man. I would say minus 150, 165 for Ankalaev. Is that about right? Do they have the odds out yet?
I'd imagine we'll get them here imminently. Okay. Minus 240 for Magomed Ankalaev.
Wow, that's a little higher than I expected. That's interesting.
And I have to say, just in closing on that matter, plus 200 for Jan Błachowicz. Even as a PFL guy now, Ken Flo, right? You got to acknowledge the UFC's ability to pivot, right? Chael Sonnen always talks about fight cards subject to change, right? But to have this fight and to be able to pivot with a former world champion and a guy in Magomed Ankalaev, whom in a lot of respects is the boogeyman in the division right now, I guess to everybody but Anthony Lionheart-Smith, who didn't seem as enamored with him going into their fight as some others. But I don't know. I think they in a position where you don't have two titles on the line, right, which is the luxury oftentimes on pay-per-view, to be able to pivot to a light heavyweight championship in what long has been the UFC's glamour division, even if it isn't right now, speaks to the depth and speaks to at least some foresight by the UFC to be ready to move on if something happened, in the light heavyweight title fight.
Yeah, no question about it. That's the benefit of having such a deep roster of fighters in various divisions, and having a roster that has so much international flavor. These guys have, fighters from all over the world, the best fighters from all over the world in which they can choose from. So, kudos to the UFC and the whole staff. I know it's a big burden on everybody anytime you get a fight switch up, especially so when it's a world championship fight.
All right, so PFL 10 during this 2022 season. Deck was absolutely loaded. Where did you have your Thanksgiving dinner? In your hotel room? Did you order room service on Thanksgiving, Ken Flo? Be honest.
I have a tendency of being a little bit of a hermit. I don't usually get out of my room very much, but we had a little Thanksgiving dinner, for the PFL guys and the staff that I attended. So it was good. We got some good turkey in. And it was good. It was surprising. It was like a couple blocks from the hotel, so not too shabby. It was cool.
Are you a big Thanksgiving guy? For me, I'm an NFL guy, and I like food, so it's probably my favorite holiday. I have a really developing Christmas spirit as a Jewish man. I can't wait to get the Christmas tree up right now. But Thanksgiving for me is a big deal. So, I'd be wanting to be 180 pounds as opposed to calling fights if it were me. But.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a little bit over that. We had... we had pretty much everything you could have for Thanksgiving. I'm not a huge turkey guy.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty damn good for me to just be digging into that turkey. But I like the stuffing. I like sweet potatoes, but I'm not a huge turkey guy.
I guess I was talking
Peruvian or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Just better. I like to mix all that shit together. But I was less talking about the food and more the holiday. If I'm Ken Flo's daughter, True Florian, I'm like, where's my dad on Thanksgiving? Where I guess so for our kids, there's sort sort of conditioned to,
yes,
my daughters are expectant that I'm just going to be packing, unpacking, and leaving shit everywhere. And it's kind of the way it goes.
Right.
So, by the way, if you notice me smirking, Cody was acknowledging that my mug says Mrs. Anik. It says math teachers aren't mean. We're above average because I married a math teacher. Mrs. Anik says my mug. All right, so let us get into this PFL card, which had a little bit of everything, even if it did not have the upset of the year, which will probably go to Leon Edwards over Kamaru Usman. It had one of the biggest upset in modern mixed martial arts history. Larissa Pacheco, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you got it. Of course you got it.
Over Kayla Harrison by unanimous decision. Unless my research is inaccurate, these women have now fought 13 rounds against one another, 8 rounds back in 2019, 5 rounds here to decide the PFL title. And Larissa Pacheco, I went through her whole resume this morning, is now a world champion. She is now a millionaire. I think maybe you had to give your scorecard on the broadcast. You said Kayla at first, but after some initial going back, you feel like Pacheco was the rightful winner in what was a close fight and seemingly came down to that 5th and final round.
I do. I think it did come down to that 5th and final round, and I felt that Pacheco just did more damage out there. And I think that was the difference. So for me, it was close when I was watching it. When I went back and watched it again, I said, you know what? That was wrong. I got that wrong. I thought Pacheco won the fight. Listen, I was screaming from the mountaintops about how good Pacheco is. And you look at the last couple seasons of what she's been doing to the women out there in her division at 155 pounds, was nothing short of remarkable. I mean, there was no one who was giving her a challenge. She looked more dominant in a lot of instances, certainly in a different way, but was looking very dominant in how she was finishing her opponents out there. And I said, this is a tough fight. I'm telling everybody, this is going to be a really tough fight. If there's one person who can do it, it's Larissa Pacheco. She was in the UFC at 20 years old. She had didn't have as much experience now. You look at the way she looks now and how ripped she is and the kind of shape she's in and the improvement in her striking and grappling and overall game, how she committed herself to staying in the United States and training with some of the best people in the world. Man, she is a beast. And there was no time during that fight where she willingly conceded any position. She was fighting tooth and nail every single ounce of the way, as was Kayla Harrison, by the way. This was the first time that I saw Kayla Harrison, hurt and taking big shots. So both those women really put on a show. I thought it was a great fight by both women. And I think we'll see both women probably fight each other again, and both will be even better than last time.
So who is that? George Greenberg, who makes you give your scorecard on the air as you're calling the fight? That's tough stuff.
Yeah, I know. A lot of pressure on me.
All right. Sorry about the voice. So in terms of her career, Pacheco, pro debut 2012. She TKO'd Irene Aldana, Jungle Fight 2013, UFC debut against Jessica Andrade 2014. She was submitted in that fight. We might have called it. I don't even know. Then she fights Jermaine Durandamy at UFC 185 in 2015. Goes from 10-0 to 10-2. Cut from the UFC, doesn't fight from 2015 to 2018, then comes back, defeats Karol Hoza, credentialed UFC fighter, then goes to the PFL, gets all this experience against Kayla Harrison, and now takes her O in this way. And not unlike Ronda Rousey, Kayla Harrison walking back into her new life. I think Kayla will handle this, better in a lot of respects than Ronda did, at least as far as her competitive spirit and her desire to channel this in the right way. But what are your thoughts now on this division and in particular Kayla Harrison moving forward after her first professional MMA loss?
I don't know exactly how the PFL is going to move on after this exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them fight again in a rematch, maybe even at 145 pounds perhaps. But I don't know. I don't think I'm not sure about what happens to the division next year, but I do know that both women would be interested in a rematch and on a pay-per-view. So I don't know exactly how they're going to proceed from here, but I don't know. I mean, again, this is a season that is absolutely brutal. It is tough on both women, and I'm sure they would prefer to just have a super fight than have to go through the whole season again and have 4 brutal fights in 8 months.
We did call that fight, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, that's the
UFC Fight Night 51. Bigfoot Silva versus Andrei Arlovsky 2.
Nice.
So, by the way, extra adrenaline energy rifling through your body on pay-per-view a little bit? A little extra pep in your step on pay-per-view night or no?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, man. The energy is just different. And anytime you have a fight in New York City, man, it's awesome. So, I felt it. I mean, we had a bunch of UFC champs in the building as well. Flavor Flav walking around,
Yeah.
George St. Pierre walking around, Henry Cejudo, Aljo. It was, Ray Longo. The star of the Anik and Florian podcast was in the building.
Yes, it was an Anik and Florian podcast reunion. George St. Pierre was on the cans with you for a little bit. Yes,
He was. Him and we had the legend Frankie Edgar on there as well, dude.
So, and before you left, you witnessed some horrific car accident, did you not?
Oh my gosh, dude, this was crazy. I almost forgot about it. Literally on the way to the airport, I get an Uber. I'm going to the airport. I have my face buried in my phone, just like, scrolling. And we roll up to what was an insane accident. The Uber driver's like, how did the police officer not see that? Some police officer just drove right by. And I'm like, what's going on? I look up and I see 5 cars scattered all over the highway. One big SUV on top of another car. And I was like, pull over. So we pull over. We're the first car to come up. We get out of the car, we roll up. As I'm walking towards this car that's flipped up, John, the thing is on fire. I mean, the engine's on fire. I'm thinking this thing's going to explode. So I'm like, what the heck's going on? I was like, we got to get these people out of the car. We go over, we smash the window.
Oh my God,
from
bro.
one side. We had to bring a lady out. I go to the other side. Some lady who was helping out like walks away from the car, be like, oh Lord, I can't, walks away from the car. I look in, I see a woman in kind of like nurse, clothing, keeled over into the passenger seat and trapped into her seatbelt. And I'm like, oh my God, is she dead? I have no idea if she's passed or anything. And meanwhile, I'm trying to manage. I yell over to the construction workers to see if there was a construction site right across the street. I'm telling them they have a fire extinguisher. They're scrambling. They're getting people over here. Now more people are kind of helping out and joining us. And eventually, I look over, I go back and check on the lady. I'm like, if she's alive, I need to get her out of this car in case this thing blows up. And I'm trying to talk to her. I see that she's moving her neck. She's moving her spine. That's another thing that I was concerned with. Do I move her? Her car was caved in on one side. I mean, it was the worst car accident I've seen. It was, people are not going to be right after that one. That was bad. I see that she's moving. She's trying to sit up. She's trapped in her seatbelt. I take her out of her seatbelt. I pick her up. I drag her out of the car. I'm like, trying to get her to walk a little bit in case that car explodes. Someone comes over. They put out the fire. I'm like helping her sit up. Ambulance, police are coming in. And within seconds, dude, they have 3 people in cuffs and handcuffs. Ambulance, kind of the EMTs kind of came in and took over, and, we kind of stepped away. And at that point, I was like, I'm missing my flight for sure. It was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes had passed. And I always roll up to the airport last minute like a dummy. And, as luck would have it, my flight got delayed perfectly in time for me to step on that plane and get there. And, it was one of those things. It wasn't until I got to the airport that I realized what happened. It was crazy. Again, like we talk about it before, man, with the unfortunate things that have happened with our friends and family around us. You never know if that's your last day or not. You don't know what's going to happen. That was one of those situations that kind of hits you in the face. Like, man, be grateful. And again, for me, I was 10 seconds away from maybe being in it. And it looks like it was, I don't want to speculate too much, but I guess someone said that someone was drinking and driving. It's 10:30 in the morning, and you think that stuff wouldn't happen, but man, it does. And I just hope those people in the accident are going to be okay, dude.
Well, that's heavy, and I'm sure you have probably no way to get in touch with these people, right?
No, I don't.
Wow. That's incredible, man. I saw briefly that you posted something about it because my wife had come across it, and then it was a comment by your wife sort of speaking to your humility that made me think I needed to dive in a little bit, but I didn't realize the gravity of it. But yeah, of course, Ken Flo to the rescue wants no credit, but I hope those people will be okay. And it's scary, right? Because I would say probably 30% of people maybe pull over, and perhaps that's the optimist in me. Perhaps it's less.
People were driving by or going around it. It was, it's tough. I don't know. I reacted that way. But for me, man, if I was in that accident and I'm passed out or knocked out, I would want someone to kind of come in. And it was especially dangerous, and it needed to be addressed because of that fire on top of the car. And that's really what was worrying me.
Well, that's pretty jarring as a way to begin your trip, but good on you, man, for helping save those people. Man, that's heavy. All right, so Larissa Pacheco is a millionaire. So is Brendan Loughnane, if I'm not mistaken. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Rob Wilkinson. I mean, where do we want to begin? Robbie fucking Wilkinson, right? This is incredible. I mean, good for OAM. I remember so many fighter meetings with this guy and so much potential and such a great base to realize MMA success. Let's start with Olivier Aubin-Mercier. What can you tell us about the fight and ultimately what led up to the huge knockout of Stevie Ray for the $1 million?
I'd seen OAM around TriStar here and there. I didn't know too much about him. I had the opportunity to go out and visit him in Montreal. We did a feature for the PFL out there and got a chance to really know him. And man, what a humble, nice dude. Lives so simply, John, and that's all he cares about. Even after he goes, if I win the $1 million, we're going to win the same. I'm going to live in the same way. I'll probably be in the same place, have the same car, have my bicycle and my skateboard to roll around town in. And man, to see him win in the manner in which he did it against Stevie Ray, one of the toughest dudes out there, ended up getting a knockout, just a beautiful right hand, a check hook that surprised Stevie Ray and knocked him out. And it was a round where Stevie Ray was actually winning. The first round was Olivier. Right. He was using his footwork. Second round, he was kind of in some big time trouble, had his back taken, which is the worst position to be in against Stevie Ray. He ultimately gets out, surprises him with that right hook, which was just nasty, getting his first finish of the season. He was kind of being criticized of being very strategic and all that. So to see him get a finish here in the final was tremendous for him, and what a performance.
I can't speak to any one of these individuals and their perceived financial freedom, right? But I certainly know that $1 million helps, even if they only drop $720,000 into your bank account or whatever. So to our audience at Anik Florian Pod, if you did get $720,000 dropped into your bank account on a Monday morning, what would you buy? Would you buy something? Would you spend a couple $100 on like a Nintendo Switch? What would you buy? I'm curious if anybody would go buy something, or if you just sit on the money like Olivier Aubin-Mercier. But I'm always happy to see a good egg realize success when they leave the UFC, when they have top 15 talent, right? Because don't tell me, and I know the lightweight division is loaded, but don't tell me that OAM is not a top 15, top 20 lightweight in the world. And, he's got $1 million and he's got a lightweight championship. How about Rob Wilkinson over Omari Akhmedov, TKO, doctor stoppage at the end of round 2? A lot of our UFC audience probably knows the history with Rob Wilkinson. He was the victim of Israel Adesanya, and Adesanya's UFC debut attempted, more than a dozen takedowns. And Rob Wilkinson has been remade. He now trains stateside at Factory X. Actually hasn't been there all that long, but, a change your life type of evening for Rob Wilkinson as well. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, and he's trained actually a lot with Izzy as well. He's gone over there and trained with the guys over at City Kickboxing as well, and has transformed himself into a completely different dude. First of all, you look at him now, John, you go, how the hell did this guy make 185 pounds? He looks massive at 205. So yeah, he's been working, just diligently on his striking and his overall game, and you could see it. Every fight he was in, he got the finish. He looked absolutely fantastic. It was a war against Omari while it lasted. Omari was not going away easily, but it was still a dominant performance for him. He definitely landed some shots on Rob, but Rob was dominating that fight for the most part and ended up getting the win. And he was just perfect all year long. Yeah. And I'm telling you, he's another guy that could easily be in the top 15 in the world in any organization as well, just based on what he's done with his game and how he's looked, and just confidence-wise, physically, he's a beast.
Plenty more on the PFL pay-per-view coming up with Ray Longo, who was in the building smiling and holding babies and all that, but now playing on UFC Fight Pass, a one-of-a-kind UFC documentary about the challenging upbringing of former UFC strawweight champion Rose Namajunas. It debuted at the Austin Film Festival. It now resides on UFC Fight Pass. Thug Rose, mixed martial artist, examines the adversity and triumphs of one of the UFC's brightest stars, is now available on UFC Fight Pass. All right.